And here we are. Welcome to another extraordinary meeting of the minds and an extraordinary mission for all of you to the world. Welcome to Happy Body, Happy Planet Online Summit. And today I have a guest who has a very, very unique gift. And I was trying to figure out what the profession is that he has, but I think I can just say spirit healer or something like that could be grasped. He has studied spirituality in many places in the world, and we can briefly hear from him where that brought him. And he helps people find the peace inside. And I know that all of us need the peace inside again and again because we get so affected by everything. And of course, we're supposed to get so affected and we're supposed to get so fearful. And here comes Shivallah, right? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
That's right, yes.
Shivallah is this great, wondrous being that I'm so honored to have you here with me, Shivallah. And please be welcomed. Please be gifting us with your presence and with your experience. So, what is it that you do?
I don't.
That is so wonderful. It just, oh. Yes. And you teach to not.
So let me put it this way, maybe. All of our doing is our undoing, has become our undoing when it is imbalanced. When we are not maintaining the balance of being conscious. So what I do, if you want to say if I do anything, is that I extend an offering, an invitation. I offer an invitation to be, so that when people listen to my voice or when they perceive this body form, there is a natural innate quality of beingness and a milieu of stillness, of serenity that emanates through me, especially when in dialogue, when in teaching mode. But it's more like a transmission rather than a knowledge teaching, so to speak. And then what happens is that there's an awakening and a remembering that starts to occur.
May I equate this or equate this a little bit with what we all experience as artists when we create, whether it be a painting or writing or a sculpture or music, that there is this transmission of the greater I, the greater all of us, the greater spirit that happens. I've often experienced that producing art or transmitting art. Is that too far-fetched?
When we're conducting music, when I'm conducting music, when I'm writing music myself, or when I'm drawing, doing graphic design, when we're in the process of listening, we are relaxing into a deeper state of absorption, of listening to the music. If we're perceiving or the colors, what we're designing, we're going into a very deep immersion with that absorption of perceiving and seeing and listening inside. How does the great mystery wanting to express itself? We're listening for that.
Yeah.
We might be assuming that I'm the doer, but still we've gone into that deep immersion of being absorbed in the moment. And we're listening. We're still listening somewhere inside.
But by the doing, we're allowing that to happen in a way, right? If we didn't produce the music or play the sounds, then it couldn't flow.
Yes.
Wonderful. So many of my speakers have addressed, because we're talking about self-healing and healing the planet, so we're talking about biology and we're talking about medicine, or what is perceived as medicine. And then we're talking about what is reality and what is all of that which in our consciousness is shifting to a new way of seeing, a new way of experiencing that which is. And that means we're using the energy that is within everything also for energy work, or we're realizing that it plays a role in medicine. What is your kind of energy work? Yeah. Yes.
So it is just what just occurred then is like the beginning of it opening up. So in a way, it's like a very refined or a different frequency of energy work that happens through silence and stillness again. And in that moment, when there is no words in response to your question, then inside of my eyes, I have that sense that I'm inviting you inside.
Mm-hmm.
On one level, I'm inviting you into my heart, into this silence, which is the same silence within you, the same silence circulating around us and everywhere else. There's a quality of spaciousness. So this is the energy work. If I'm in a group situation or a private situation, I may have somebody place their feet on top of my feet, literally put their feet directly on top of my feet so that they can feel that they're placing their feet onto the earth. And then there's a circulation that occurs between our bodies. But in this moment, as you're listening, as you're perceiving through your eyes, you can hear the sound of the speaker's voice, the one that you identify as being Shivallah. And there's an invitation for you to come into a poise within this moment, to be poised in this absorption. So this is the energy work that I primarily function through, you could say.
So for those listeners who have not had that experience of just being and finding the new, or the always there being inside of ourselves through this moment of silence, there is an energy level I think we're talking about that is outside of time and space, and therefore it transcends, just like the waves that transmit our image and our voice through space without needing time or space through the telephone or the laptop. There is this possibility of connecting outside of time and space. Am I putting that correctly?
In one sense, I see time outside of the timelessness. so to speak. So yes, that's the whole point of why even Yeshua was known to have said that the kingdom of heaven lies within, go within. So in that sense, this is what we're doing. We are coming into the space that is appearing to be outside of time, but really we're going within. So time is on the outside. So we're going within into that Bindu point, the Bindu point within, where there is only the one. There is no other. There is no duality. We're sitting back into alignment with the one within. The one within. Where is that one within? So in the stopping of the thoughts, the relaxing into an immersion of absorption in this moment by listening to the sound of my voice, then the one who is listening relaxes automatically back into that space. Even if I'm an artist or a painter or a dancer, the same applies. Or creating food, cooking food, working with spices and herbs. When I'm cooking, the same thing happens. I'm listening. I'm listening to the feeling, how much to add, what to add, how long to cook it for, listening. If I walk away from the stove, I'm listening inside to the feeling, when to return back to the oven, to stir it again. And it's a beautiful dance then. It's a beautiful dance of the learning to listen, not just through the ears. Yeah.
How can we better prepare our bodies to be perceptive? Does it also have to do with the quality and the kind of foods and environments that we create for ourselves?
The first step is the first step. And quite often we forget to take the first step, and we've been educated to go to step 2, 3, or 4, or 5, and then start to live our life from there. The first step is to, once again, to return back. Make that the food inside, the presence of my inner being. Make that presence of my inner being the first thing that I take into my soul, I take into my body. This is food. This is manna. Inanna lachma daheye. Inanna lachma daheye. The food of the soul is presence. So to return back, my attention back to the stillness of being, then I can engage in the action, in the doing, from that space of beingness as well, rather than abandoning my being and just being lost in the doing.
You told me that you are a plant eater and you called yourself a vegan. What made you decide for that lifestyle? I'm trying to connect those notions.
What teacher did you say? I missed that word.
You told me you are a vegan. You
Yes.
eat plants. And I'm trying to connect those two concepts of and why you decided to do so.
It's an evolutionary process that happens bodily, with the mind, with the soul, with the heart. It's an evolutionary process of refining, always refining, and becoming more sensitive. And the more sensitive we become, the more poised in presence we anchor into that more and more, regardless of whatever activity we're involved in. A natural refinement begins to happen. And so I just naturally gravitated away from meat. I couldn't even take meat in at a certain point. My body wouldn't even swallow it. And I
Mm.
would say that right now I'm more of what I refer to as an adaptable vegan. So I am a vegan. However, at times, if I'm out and there is no vegan food, I can adapt. There's no strictness
Yeah.
in that sense. But I
Mm.
prefer at home, I only eat vegan oriented foods. There is no dairy at home at all. And that's just for my own benefit because I like the refined feeling of plant life, so to speak.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, the different sense of lightness that can come with not eating animal foods. And my big question to everybody is, what do you think is causing this sixth great extinction that we're experiencing? And how does that connect with the planetary situation?
The first thing I hear is that it's a mystery. We have a lot of minds endeavoring to understanding, in endeavoring to basically categorize what's happening from all sorts of angles of perception and a lot of assumption. There's a lot of scientific facts backing it up from a perspective. However, I still see it as being simply a great mystery, and that the one consciousness without a second, the great supreme intelligence, which is the great mystery, it's
Mm.
simply doing what it's always done. It's going through a process of cleansing, awakening parts of itself,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
evolving,
Mm-hmm.
exploring. That's the way I see. That's what I can say about it. That's for me. That's my way of perceiving it.
Do you also connect what is happening in the universe, the planetary positioning, etc., and the rhythms that occur in the movement of our universe to what is happening?
In one sense, there's no answer to that because where I am right now, where you are right now, there is no planetary consideration. There is no science consideration. I am seeing through my eyes you and the environment around me. I'm hearing what I'm hearing. When you speak, I hear the sound of your voice. When I'm speaking, I can hear the sound of this voice, my voice. So there are times when I like to read, I like to consider, to tune in. However, my experiencing in this life is all of that. You could say the great mystery of life, the one consciousness, the sacred one, experiencing itself through this expression in this dimensional realm and being at peace with this, being able to be in that peace, no matter what is being said as happening in the so-called outer world. All of that becomes some type of food for the body, for the mind as well. However, there is a natural momentum for me to always keep on, my attention naturally returns back inside again and again, even by the end of the day. In spite of what I've read, all the horrors that are happening in the world right now, at the end of the day, here I am. Here we are. I am here. So maybe through that, there is a transmission for that out into the world. I'm holding space for that for others, for when they're ready to return back inside, to come back to the original food of presence, the original food that we really need, the primordial food that people are thirsty and hungry for, is presence in this very moment. The presence of peace, the presence of that subtle form of love, which is not outside in the world, it's within. It's within. So that's my focus. And all the knowledge, whatever I've acquired over the years, even listening to all sorts of scientists and metaphysical teachers, that just dissolves by the end of the day. And I return back into that space of where I have no need to know anything. No need to know anything. I'm just here. I'm just here.
But isn't the wonder of being present, the awareness of being present on planet Earth at a time where so much is shifting, where so much is awakening, where so much, yes, is going through traumatic events because we're changing and because it's this back and forth? Do we allow the change? The change will happen. The consciousness will shift. Humanity has a different level of being, of recognizing that each of us is a being and can no longer be simply oppressed. Although, as we have discussed before, currently we're all being pushed to be obedient. But at the same time, I feel this great transformation, and I'm glad I'm here at this time on planet Earth, in this era change. I feel that very strongly. And I think that what you're bringing to that is the deeper experience of that extraordinary time that we're living through. Am I misunderstanding that?
As you were speaking then, what I was hearing, yes, you are understanding. I can hear that, definitely. And I was hearing an analogy coming through as you were speaking. And it's an analogy that I quite often like to use, and that's from an Indian theology, which is talking about the symbolism of Shiva and Shakti, and that Shiva represents the principle of our inmost consciousness, which is one without a second. And then there is Shakti, which is all of life energy and the nurturing principle in life, whereas Shiva represents the inmost consciousness that is always unmoving. It always remains the same. Nothing has happened there. It is the one that is watching and perceiving all of life that is happening. So a presence teacher, a consciousness teacher, a consciousness catalyst always presents this to other brothers and sisters to remember and to awaken that one within in order to maintain a sense of balance as we are exploring the infinite mysteries in this world and watching the extraordinary evolutionary process happen on the planet and within the universe. To always remember also that I am the one that is witnessing. that is always in a state of stillness, where nothing is happening. Absolutely nothing is happening. It is simply the witnessing unidentified consciousness, always remaining the one without a second. So that is part of my work. That's why I speak of this. And in the world, we're seeing a great imbalance with that. That is missing. So much attention on all the activity of how Shakti is unfolding and dancing and going to wild dances and chaos dances and all sorts of agendas behind the dancing.
Yeah, I think the agendas have been there for thousands of years. The large agendas. I don't know. I think, or at least this kind of agenda that we're experiencing now, the empirical defining ourselves by what we own instead of by what we are or who we are. That is to me, an era of the last 6,000 years, from what I can see and understand in eras of different experiences of us humans on the planet. But we're coming out of that, and it's difficult, and we need that inner peace to not get lost in the struggle and the always pedaling for air. We need that, what you're giving us.
What I'd like to respond to with that is that I'm hearing that for health to unfold and to flower into wholeness, we need to reinstate the very first foundational principle, which is the one within. To reinstate that Shiva principle, to return to reclaim, and to reinstate, I am the one at the very heart of everything. So that once I am here completely within this bodily condition, regardless of what imbalances there appears to be happening, I am here as consciousness and I am whole. That triggers off another sense of healing and wholeness that is possible.
Yeah.
So that is also part of the work of a mystic. A true mystic is a healer, is a health conscious being in the very first place. This is wholeness. This is whole health.
Hmm. So for all of us who are very much engaged in the living patterns with families and kids and or grandkids and missions that we want to bring into the world and businesses and improvements everywhere, with this drive to matter in the world, to have an impact, to help the transition. I call it from competition to contribution, to that awareness that we have something to give rather than to take. For those of us, how do you connect when you seem to take yourself outside of that that paradigm in a way? Not being a married man or with children and having those kind of earthly missions.
Could you repeat the question?
How do you, as a mystic, who seems to me a little bit outside of our earthly experience of families with kids and a sort of daily life, how do you connect to us who have that daily life?
I have in my earlier years been a stepfather to 3 children for about 3 years. And it's a wonderful experience. When I was married sometime after that to another beloved, I wanted to have children with her, but it just wasn't able to happen. Life had another plan in store for me, so to speak. Every so often, my stepdaughter, who is now in her 40s, sends her 12-year-old son to come and stay with me for a weekend because he doesn't have a father in his life.
Yeah.
So I become like a surrogate father for him, and we spend time together. And it's just being very human, very ordinary, cooking together, going for walks together, watching a movie together, doing it, whatever it may be in any moment together. So that's still part of my life.
I'm so glad to hear that, because you can appear so above all the ordinary folks, and here you are, but you're also really with your feet on the ground in this life experience. And that, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad to for the audience also to hear that we can be both, and we all are both. The connection to the universe, the great spirit hooking into the great one, and functioning in the world as in all the roles that we play. And thank you. So that helps me a lot, and I think our audience too, to understand that those are not exclusive forms of being.
No,
Right.
I love being like a child. I love being like a child and playing with kids.
Yes.
So that's the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful moments for me, is simply being with children, because then I can relax and there's no sense of having to be an adult and having to talk about all the things that are happening in the world or my work or anything like that. Just to be playing with a child, or playing with a dog with the child as well.
Yeah.
So that's just very simple, very simple.
But then but it is actually what you're describing also. It is very much being in that present moment without having to consider any kind of larger constructs of reality. It just is so being, right?
Yes. Look, 2 days ago, I met 3 young people in their late 20s who are traveling in Australia like gypsies.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 of them are from Israel, one is from Spain. And I invited them to come up to Springbrook and I would take them for a walk. So there we were yesterday, going for a walk down into the rainforest together and talking every so often. And then I made lunch for them. We sat out on a picnic bench out in the beautiful rainforest nature, and we're just eating food together. That just simple, sharing with other human beings.
Yes.
Just that, that's all. Very simple.
Wonderful. I would love to hear for our audience a couple of your own experiences where you felt that you were kind of an experience was transforming you, and or in your learning, maybe to become what you are now, and or people who have worked with you. Tell us how they have transitioned into a truer self, into a greater peace with themselves.
The first one that comes to me is, I think it was about 1997 in Los Angeles. I was in LA at the time. And through an unexpected circumstance, I was homeless for about 4 months or so. No, actually about 7 months. And for the first 3 months of that time, dear friends took me into their apartment, but they only had a living room for me to sleep on. But then after about 3 months, they needed their space back. So another friend offered me an office to sleep in Westwood Boulevard in LA near Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And so I was 5 days a week for 4 months. I was sleeping on the office floor, and every 7 days a week, but for 5 days, I had to be out of that office. And my teaching work had dried up. So at that point in time, because of the circumstance, I couldn't do anything else. So it was a very tough period, and I had very little money in some weeks. So I was running out of food quite often. And at a certain point, I couldn't consider, well, all the nutritional aspects of the food that I needed because I had a minimal amount of money to buy the food. So I would go into Trader Joe's and look around and realize that, boy, there's so much I wanted to buy, but I couldn't. So I had to completely adjust my sense of what matters the most. And I started looking at the colors of food. The colors of food. This was a very significant shift in my life at this point in time. I started looking at colors as being the nutritional value. No longer I couldn't afford to consider the nutritional value of food from a nutritional point of view. I had to look at the
Your
color.
organic special.
Right, so, exactly. So, and because I only had so much money, so I'd look at, okay, what's the cheapest green vegetable I could buy? Asparagus was too expensive, and I love asparagus, couldn't buy that. But broccoli was the cheapest one I could buy. So I'd buy, that's green. There's an orange vegetable. There's maybe yellow. Maybe I couldn't have all of it on the one meal. I had to break it all up. So that went on for day after day after day until finally it didn't matter. All that tension about nutritional value of food was falling away. So I had a consciousness shift into looking at the nutritional value through color. Color was what was more important. And that started to initiate a detachment from my attachment to what I needed in my body, what was more important. So it was all about colors. Then I realized, well, it's not just about taking the colors in through my mouth, it's about taking the colors in through my eyes. Taking the colors in through my eyes also. So even if I was not eating much food, I'd be looking outside when I'm walking along on the streets with not much food. I'd be looking at the green and absorbing the greens from the tree, the leaves, absorbing it and realizing I'm drinking right now. I'm taking this in. It's okay. It's okay. I might not have much food in my belly, but at least I can absorb this greenery through my eyes. And I tell myself, it's okay, Shivallah. You're okay. If life wants you to disappear from this body, then that's through the divine will. Just be okay in this moment. I'm here in this body. I'm walking along on the streets of Westwood Boulevard down towards Santa Monica, down to, where is it? Venice Boulevard to go for a walk. But I'm here in the moment. I'm here in this body. Life is giving me the breath. It's okay. I only have half a packet of corn chips in my bag for the rest of the afternoon. I don't have any more money. That's okay. At least I have something in my hand. I return back to the bus stop to go back to the office. And there I'm sitting, and this is a transformative moment for me. And I have half a packet of corn chips for the night. And then all of a sudden, a bag lady walks up behind me, carrying a trolley. It was very clear that she's homeless also. Her clothing was very dirty. She appeared to be in her 60s. She stands up to the left-hand side of me and she starts talking to herself. And I'm looking at her, I'm going, oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden, a young African American walks up in front of me into the gutter. And he starts looking right in front of me and he starts looking for cigarette butts. And then he starts talking to himself. Then I'm looking at him talking to himself. I look up to the woman, she's talking to herself. And I'm sitting here with a bag of corn, half a bag of corn chips. And I'm realizing, oh my goodness, this is miraculous. It appears that I'm assuming that I'm the one with awareness, that I'm perceiving her, I'm perceiving him, and I'm self-aware that I'm sitting here on the bus stop bench, and I could be her. I could be him. What is it that makes it appear that I'm the one in this body appearing to be not talking to themselves, being objectively aware of them, and yet the three of us are homeless? I got on that bus that night and so grateful to go back to that office building to sleep on the floor, realizing that I only have half a bag of corn chips, but I'm so grateful to have that half a bag of corn chips. So grateful to go back to a space where I have a roof over my head, because I have no idea where they're going to be sleeping that night. I had no idea. But I felt like I was in communion with, they were a part of me, showing me something very precious in that moment.
How did that whole situation resolve for you?
It brought me into the simplicity of gratitude and being grateful for the simplicity of what I have in this moment. I may not have anything to eat, a proper meal for that night, but I have half a bag of corn chips. That's something. Life is giving me the breath of life. Who knows what is going to unfold in the morning or the next day? So it was giving me an appreciation of just being poised in the present moment and being okay with not knowing what is going to unfold tomorrow. Being okay with the not knowing space and recognizing that it's a mystery. If life wants me to die tomorrow or the next day, then that's going to happen. I don't know. But I kept living the next day and the next day. And every time I then would walk by another homeless person, I would see them and look at them and watch them as I'm walking by and going, that could be me. That is me. That could also, I could be the one who's lying there instead of the one who's walking in this body. And so in that moment, I felt I am happy to be me. I'm grateful to be me. This is where life wants me to be. And it's an unknown mystery. That's what it gave me again and again during that 4 months of living in Los Angeles in an office.
How did that end? I know that all the listeners want to know, how did it end? And of course, I imagine that it had something to do with you being Australian and not a U.S. citizen, or maybe you were. I don't know. How did you resolve, or how did life resolve and tell you that, no, we want you to live and do more and travel again?
Here I am. But this is how it ended. This is how it ended. This is the ending. Now,
Well,
how that
visiting
finished.
Australia, so you did not walk there or take the bus.
So after about 4 months of that, there was another. I was going to the Agape Church where Dr. Michael Beckwith, Reverend Michael Beckwith,
Yes,
was
yes.
was the speaker,
Mhm.
and some dear African American friends kept on inviting me to come to Agape Church, and at one point I was invited to be a singer on stage for a famous Swami from India called Swami Kaleshwar. And so Swami Kaleshwar invited me to, because he knew me from before that homeless time, he invited me to be one of the the singer in order to prepare the audience for him to walk out on stage. So
There's
by
another
go,
thing we have in common, a singing voice. Yeah.
yes,
I
so
don't know, you know that that was my first career, singing.
yes, yes, I remember you telling me that.
Mhm.
So, and I sung a song called Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, Let There Be Peace. So at the end of one of these events at Agape Church, as I walked outside, a young woman walked up to me and just had a recognition with me. And I had a recognition with her, and she started speaking to me. What do I do? And then after I started to share with her what's happening, I was a little bit hesitant to tell her where I'm living, but she wanted to know, and I told her. And she said, "You don't need to be there anymore. You're coming home with me to my family, with my husband and my children, and I want you to come in, and I want to gift my family with your presence, and we'll take care of you. You don't need to be there anymore. I see who you are, what you are. Please come and be and gift our family, and we'll take care of you. We'll give you a room to stay in and just be a part of our family." And that was in Orange County at that point. So I moved out of that down to Orange County. Hang on for a moment. Hang on. I have to connect up the power because it looks like the phone is going to die in a second. Hang on.
Yes, I had to do that the other day as well.
Okay.
But
There we
these,
go.
I love these stories because they give me goosebumps and they give me this sense of that is where life happens and that is where we grow and that is where we connect, and that connection with that woman and also with Beckwith and the church, and yeah, it just that's what we're here to do, to make those connections and gift each other with our presence.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Basically what happened was that this woman who I met up with was obviously a soul family member. Her name is Angela Drake, very beautiful soul. And she just recognized like we're brother and sister. And so it was like soul family, the great mystery. Through
Yeah.
the mystery of love, reached out through me, through Angela to me, and said, "Dear heart, enough of that now. This is the next stage of the journey."
Beautiful. So, in the work that you have done, I know there are all these beautiful testimonials on your website, but I would love to hear from you what you have observed in others, how they have been able to transition into a more peaceful themselves through working with you.
You really need to ask them. I would say that.
Oh, but it's
However,
such a beautiful thing to observe sometimes how people transition. No?
So I could tell you one being comes to my awareness actually, and that was a former lover, partner. When I met up with her, it was in 1993 in Australia, and she hadn't met up with any sort of spiritual teacher or mystic in her time up until then. And we left Australia and came to New Zealand, and she and I set up my very first healing center in Auckland in New Zealand,
Mm-hmm.
called Only One Sky Foundation. And I began teaching an event called Mystic Circle Gathering every 2 weeks. So she was adapting to that, learning a lot, not just being a lover and a partner, but really opening up with her, you could say, spiritual awareness to all sorts of concepts for her, all sorts of understanding. And it was difficult. It became painful at times for her because it meant she had to open up in such a vulnerable way that it was challenging her protector controller aspect of her personality makeup. And at a certain point,
Yeah.
after about a year and a half, we had to go through a separation because she needed to leave and go back to England because of her visa. But once she got back there, she said, look, I need some more time. I need more space. I need to assimilate and digest this. I love you still, but I need to digest this. And I had a sense that we weren't going to really continue as partners anymore. I did go back over there and meet up with her again, and we reconnected, and it was very beautiful, but it felt like something had shifted. She wrote to me at one point a beautiful letter saying, Shivallah, that year and a half of being with you was the most painful time in my life ever, but it was the most transformative time I've ever experienced in my life. And I just want to thank you for all the gifts that you've given me.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful. Yes.
that's a beautiful testimonial in its own right. She went on to become a very well-known healer, body worker, masseuse in her own way in England, and that was inspired through me as well. I was known as a Hawaiian kahuna body worker back that time. I had already been exploring the shamanic arts of
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii also, and I became very well known as a teacher of that. So that was passed on to her as well, and then she went on with that.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I know that we feel a little bit, when we share stories like that, we feel a little bit of vanity or whatever that might be. But it's so important, I think, for our audience to hear the transitions that are possible. And it's not always easy, but it's so, so, so worth it.
Yes, yes.
And now I have another very tricky question to answer. What do you think, or what comes to you, is the significance of this pandemic, whatever it is, of this phenomenon that is driving the entire planet at the moment, or herding humanity into a certain behavior? What is it that we're learning?
Are we speaking, are we wanting to speak about the pandemic of unconsciousness?
Yes.
There has always been a pandemic of unconsciousness on Earth for thousands of years.
Yes.
And there are always waves.
Oh, Shivallah, that was beautiful.
There have always been increasing, escalating waves of consciousness awakening.
Yes.
In one sense, it's like a paradox. What I see is that a lot of people, and especially a lot of light workers and metaphysical teachings and spiritual teachers will acknowledge that it appears, and I do use that phrase very in an emphasizing manner, it appears as though there is a war on consciousness, and there is a war on consciousness. However, it is still a paradox. The deepest phenomena is that it is a game of hide and seek. The one without a second is playing a game of hide and seek with itself. The one consciousness without a second is playing a game of hide and seek with itself. And part of that process is endeavoring to awaken itself and awaken aspects of itself and to purify itself if it can, when it can. But it's a game of hide and seek.
Yeah. And those of us who are not hiding, where do we go? I have an answer to that, of course, because I am realizing that this whole summit is exactly about that. And the many minds that I have interviewed so far and the many minds I will be interviewing have all been coming through to some clarity with this unconsciousness infection.
Would you like me to respond to that?
Yes.
Through the healing paths, through the healing modalities, we are seeking wholeness. We are seeking health, and through health, we're wanting to feel that extraordinary harmony, the hidden harmony of wholeness. Where do we find that? Where do we anchor into to really be anchored into that? Did not Yeshua say the kingdom of heaven lies within? We are wanting to experience a heavenly quality of peace that arises out of the harmony of health, that arises out of the perfection of wholeness. We are wanting to experience that sense of heavenly peace and that sense of divine love that is in harmony, that gives us the sense of wholeness. We go within again. We rest back in to that space where it's nowhere. There is nowhere to go to. It's not a distance. It's not outside of the one who is listening, the one who is speaking, the one who is doing, the one who is being. It just is inside. We rest back in that.
I feel very strongly that I can be in that space inside and in that peace because, or even more so because I connect with so many other human beings who are also moving that consciousness forward and sharing the possibility of it with those who want to find it in themselves. So to me, it's this sharing that enables so much. So thank you so much for all this sharing of that peace within, because were it not for this human connection, I think it would be very hard if we would just be sitting by ourselves to get there.
I'll repeat the Aramaic saying once again. Inanna lachma deheye. Inanna lachma deheye. I am the one within, and within the very breath of life is the manna of life. This is the food. As we return our attention back to this, as the primary recognition that this is where we must be in order to even assimilate the nutritional value from any sort of physical food, we are reminded that here I am. Here is the original, the primordial food, which is presence, the presence of consciousness. So this is why I keep mentioning this and always coming back to this. This is my work, to always invite one another to sit back into that again and again and again, in order to assimilate, not just to remember, but for this body to be able to assimilate and make the most of the nutritional value. What if I only have one apple to eat through the whole day, or maybe one carrot, or one piece of bread through that day because of my war-torn circumstance? Maybe that one piece of bread can be assimilated with totality and have a far greater nutritional value once I'm sitting in here back at the source and absorbing that one piece of bread with tremendous presence.
Of course, we can live on just air and sunshine. There have been all these experiments and people who decided to live for years just on breathing and sunshine, and it can work. But my answer to that is I love living and playing and eating and flavor and colors, like all these things that you spoke about, playing with children. So I don't want to necessarily live on air and sunshine. If I had to, yes, but I love the presence in this life with all its sensual experiences and the incredible joy that comes from being in the presence of others who are highly conscious, in the presence of your consciousness. So I thank you for that. And I would love to ask you to speak either a poem or another mission for our audience before we close. And I also want to remind our audience that they can sign up for a gift from you. And we don't know what that is yet, but it will be a beautiful surprise that will be posted below this video in our summit. So the floor is yours.
Every step we take is on sacred ground, and every breath received is sacred life. Every gift of love we spread around awakens every heart into the sacred way. The sacred one, revealing the sacred one through the language of light and melody of love. The sacred one, revealing the sacred one through the language of light and melody of love. Every gift of love we spread around awakens every heart unto the sacred way.
No, no, no. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Shivallah, I can't wait to come to Australia and create a beautiful event together.
Look forward to receiving you as well. Thank you, Johanna. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right.
Aloha. Aloha.
Aloha. Yes, that too. Let me see where we need to